Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I've heard words matter.
Words do matter. In fact, the philosopher René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. In our world today, I might say, I feel, therefore I exist. Yeah. We'll see after this. We're talking in this. We're going to talk about thinking and feeling. It's good. Stick around.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
How are you?
You know, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
That's right. So, thank you for push and play. You found the Steve and Steve Show. I'm Steve Walsh.
And I'm Steve Wastenberg. Thank you so much for coming here and really appreciate you subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Tell your friends and family. That's probably enough.
Yep. That's a good start. So we always start, and truly, if this is the first time you watch us, Steve and Steve, we always have topics that we like to discuss over different drinks, and the reason this whole show came about was to share those wisdom ideas that we come up with, even how strange they might be, or practical.
Right. Usually they're pretty positive. Usually they're upbeat. Sometimes a little wacky.
Yep.
But we always drink something.
Something, right? And sometimes it's unusual, sometimes it's normal.
This one has floaties in it.
This one does have floaties in it. And
I think I'll let you find out once we try it. So enjoy this.
Like pure lemonade or something?
No, it's just lime, pure lime, fresh
lime
in sparkling water.
However,
I think the sparkling water maybe doesn't have the bubbles that it should.
No. So. All right, Steve, topic of the day.
Feel or think. Or feel and think. That's the topic.
All right. So
I'll tell you how this came up. This was the idea behind it. The other day I was talking with my kids about how you hear a lot today. Instead of someone saying, somebody says something and the other person responds with, instead of, well, I think that XYZ, they'll respond with, I feel that this. And the difference between the two, I was saying to, well, if you feel something, that's more of a subjective, in my own person, the way I feel about something, very emotion kind of driven. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I think about it, it's more of a logical, I'm thinking about, the various, and that could be considered a little more objective or data kind of driven. And so I got in a great discussion, some might call it an argument, with various younger people about this, and I thought it'd be a great one to talk about.
So when you say, people are starting to say, I feel like we should go this direction, or I feel that politics is blah blah blah.
Right.
Versus
exactly.
I think.
Yes.
What about some people say I believe?
Well, that's a different one too. That might be another video, as you like to say often.
Or a different topic.
Different
but
topic.
as I believe, is that more or less I think?
I would say that I believe is probably maybe a combination of feel and think, because it is kind of subjective, not as much data, but there might be some data behind a belief that you could reference on it.
Yeah.
Well, whereas a feeling is very much, from the heart.
Yeah.
Now, the argument that we had earlier about it was, in fact, one of my wonderful sons was saying, look, Dad, you're really digging into this too deep. It's actually, when I say I feel, I mean I think. And it's just the context around it that decides that feeling and thinking is basically the same thing. And I was saying to him, well, no, that means that words don't have meanings. That means that feel and think are the same thing. George Orwell wrote in 1984, the main character, Winston, his whole thing was to minimize the language, to eject different meanings from words and just get it down to the smallest amount of vocabulary that you could get. My son didn't respond very well to that when I told him that he was basically being just like the big brother killing all the words by saying that feeling and thinking, or feel and think, were the same thing.
It's definitely the English language is complex, right? But if we think about it, I'm kind of just, you had me thinking a little bit through of what, but so it's more the younger generations that are using that.
I'm not so sure it's just the younger generation. I actually think
but more
that
of them.
possibly, yeah, that's probably the case. I haven't done enough looking into it to see that, but I think.
But you're noticing it.
I am noticing it for sure, and I think that it would probably resonate with younger people when they say, and comment in our video below to tell us if when you talk to somebody, do you say, I feel that this. You brought something up the other day, though, or maybe more recent, about when you're coaching somebody, you actually want to get them to feel, right?
Yeah. So and that's where I was just trying to do some logical thinking through, because it's like the different generations, right? There's different ways of teaching, and I'm more kind of curious on, like, if you're taking the observation of it being the younger generation, is that more newer thinking of how to teach people how to express what they're
possibly
going on.
So to give you a little more data on that conversation I had with my children and my wife, we went into a restaurant and I brought up this very thing with the waitress, who was also about their age. And I said, why? Because she admitted that, yeah, when I say things, I say, I feel like this,
Yeah.
She said, well, she believes that we're in a very kind of therapeutic world, and that there is this, a lot of people have gone into therapy, but also society itself talks a lot about therapy, and therapy is, how does that make you feel?
I think in California, everybody gets a therapist.
There you go. Every single person. Boy, there goes our California base. We love you, California. Do not run away.
We don't have anybody that lives in California that watches.
Well, Keenan does. Is one of the people that probably
Keenan
will unsubscribe from this now.
Yeah, but he's an exception because he was a guest on our.
That's a good point. You can't unsubscribe, Keenan, because you were a guest.
And he wrote our jingle.
He wrote our jingle. Did we just dox him?
No, we just so. But I think so. I was just curious on more where it comes from, because it's really how we speak, right? So the generation above us, the silent generation, the great generation, they speak differently than the younger boomer generation, baby boomer generation, and the Generation X. Mm-hmm. But I think the millennials kind of just makes a jump there from Generation X to millennials. I think millennials have a language, and I think that's the group that kind of where you're kind of seeing that feeling thing. But when we were in corporate world, a lot of the training that we go through in corporate is they don't want people just thinking. They want to express, when you go through that management,
interesting.
They want you to express that, use feel a little bit better, right? And even in some sales training, you go through that, the phrase is feel, felt, found.
Yes, no, that's true.
Right? I was feeling the same way. What I felt was this, but what I really found out, right? There's some of that training that you do through sales. So feeling is a different place. Now, in coaching, 5% or less is our, I'm going to say this wrong, so you can correct me, conscious mind. Mm-hmm. And 95% of our brain is the subconscious mind.
Yeah, right.
So subconscious mind, the way that kind of speaks openly is through how we feel.
Wow. Okay.
So that's like in coaching, we want to get people to tell us how they're feeling. When you think about your goals, but what are you feeling? Because that's the subconscious mind kind of giving you that expression. So I wonder if the training that the younger generation is getting through school and is kind of mixing a little bit of trying to get to the root of where they really, really believe versus what they're thinking, like what someone told them, and they don't really believe it, but so they say, tell me what you're feeling, and kind kind of taps into that subconscious level.
Yeah, so
Didn't think we were going there, did you?
no, that I feel like you might have something here. I mean, I'm feeling like you might have something here.
There's things like we can do when we're thinking about stuff, right? Making a decision. We consciously think through that decision.
Right.
Right? But there's practices you can do through muscle testing to see if your subconscious mind believes that you should make that decision. Right? So you've seen people hold up their arm and press on a positive and press down on a negative.
Yes.
Right? So there's things that your body naturally says yes or no, and that goes down to the subconscious level. But in order to tap that, sometimes you have to use the word feel to bring those emotions up so you can actually express it. Now, the way that it's being used may not be a true deep into the feeling. It might be more thought process, and they're not really kind of evaluating what they're feeling.
Well, and so the reason that I was kind of pushing back on this idea of feeling about something in a conversation as opposed to thinking about something in a conversation is that when we think about something in a conversation, we're actually putting together a kind of, argument, pro and con for whatever we're proposing in that conversation. When on the other hand, we're feeling about something, it's much more of I have an opinion, and my opinion is just as relevant as your opinion. And I'm saying that because we go down that road of feeling more than thinking, we get this kind of relativity of, well, what you feel is good and what I feel is good, and we'll just both need to feel this way.
Yeah.
Whereas thinking brings kind of a middle ground where we can say, well, here's some of the data around what
words matter, and I think that's right.
Absolutely, words matter.
So it's a defense mechanism, right? Because if you think, then it is your opinion, right? And I can argue around what you think. But when you feel something, I can't argue around the feeling.
That's exactly my point.
So consciously, if you changed what you say, you can influence the way someone acts, right?
Right.
So consciously, what I recently found myself doing, instead of saying, I think we'll do this, I actually use the word believe. And that, it goes along those lines of feel, but it's more,
there's some
a little bit more
yeah.
basis of confidence of the strength of my thinking, right? So a lot of times when I'm talking to my coaching clients, instead of saying, I think I can help you, I say, I believe I can help you.
Right.
There's a difference.
There is. If I say, I think I can help you, it's just this pure...
It's a question mark.
Yeah, there's a question. If I believe I can help you, it's both, I think I have the ability to do it, and I have a belief that I'm going to succeed in helping you.
So
it's not all me. You've got to be included, and that's where the belief comes in, right?
Right, there's a confidence. So next time when you're talking to your children, and they say, I feel like we should go that way, I go, no. I believe we're going this way. There's a definite direction to that.
I'm not trying to take it like that, but I do want to go down where you said, if you were with your coaching client and you were to say to them, I feel like I can help you, they're going to go like, well, I'm glad you feel like that, but I'd really like to know if you're going to help me, right?
Considering that most of my clients are professionals.
Really good point, though.
Professionals on the analytical mind, the feeling may not come off that well.
No, but that's a good example of, and by the way, I don't want to propose here that feeling is like, got to get rid of feeling and only think, because there are examples. In fact, I've got two that I'd like to give right now. One is about how you feel. If I'm in a room, let's say, and I'm in some sort of a party, and I'm going to use a guy in this just to I see a guy over here that really just gives me the creeps, right? I just have a really bad feeling about it. Maybe some things that he's done, maybe just the way he's, acting, looking, whatever it is. And I've got a feeling about that. I actually, in my experience, because some of the things I've experienced about, I'm going to go off of that feeling and say, all right, I'm going to be very wary of that person. And if that person is like a serial killer, that was a really good feeling or intuition on it. And if I were, on the other hand, to think about that person and say, oh, well, come on, Steve, you're just, feeling this way. Think about it. He's probably acting like that because of X, Y, and Z. Well, that thinking could actually get me in trouble if that person really was a serial killer. I'm not suggesting or not, but I'm not going to suggest that it's paranoia either. But I have direct experience that I'm not going to talk about here.
But when you think in that scenario, right? When you think and you say I'm thinking that, then you can be projected as a paranoid type person.
You could.
But if you say I'm feeling like this is not right, then your intuition is given.
Exactly. We had an experience literally on this right here before videotaping this, where we were getting up set to go, and I said, Steve, I feel like maybe the sound is not recording on here. And you said, no, we're fine. I go, no, I don't know. I just have a feeling. And you went up there, you looked at it, and the sound wasn't on. We would have done this whole thing without. So there is a place for feeling. I'm certainly not saying that there isn't a place for feeling.
But I think you're right. I think it might be maybe the younger generation, if you're observing that the younger generation is using it more in the way they talk about things, then they're, in a sense, they're overusing it and potentially using it incorrectly.
Well, and certainly in this kind of you're right and I'm right, and there is no real truth.
Because you can't argue about what someone's feeling.
Right. You can't.
Right, because that might be what they're feeling.
It's my feeling.
Right.
And it can become a real place for victimhood. No, that's another video for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But if it's, if I'm feeling like pizza, man, we're going pizza.
Well, now that is a different story, and I am usually feeling like pizza. So, I don't know. Have we felt and thought this thing
I think
through?
it's interesting. It's certainly from my view of this topic, I'm going to pay attention to what the younger generation is saying around when I start asking them things, and they bring up, I feel like we should go this way, or I feel this. I'm going to be looking for that now because I had not picked that up. And I know, we talked a little bit before, there was a difference the way that our two generations talk compared to the older generations, the greater generation, the silent generation, how they talk. There was a difference between them and us, and now you're noticing that even down below, the next generations coming up are even having a different discussions. And it's naturally, because if you think about it, when we grew up, when we were getting into high school and even college, the internet and computers were starting to become into the houses. It was kind of a new thing. We still have phones on the walls with cables and stuff, right?
Dialed.
Yeah. And now our kids, they grew up with the internet and wireless. That's their life is.
Right.
So obviously they're going to be thinking and talking a little bit different than what we would be, because there's different things and different ways of living.
Well, and think about it. You have the immediacy of all of this visual and audio coming to you much more so than we had. Our video and audio was, birds outside, cars, muscle cars driving on the roads really loud and stuff. But they're constantly being exposed to things that would evoke emotion, which is tied to feeling.
Right.
So I think it's a natural thing.
Well, and I think there's another shift coming in our society. I'm going to drop this bomb and we'll be done.
Okay.
And it's certainly my opinion, and I know there's like-minded people that are in this opinion, but I believe there's another shift. We had the industrial age, right? Like different ages, right? And then
industrial information.
Now we're kind of in the information age, right? People would say we're in information age, but I think there's another age that we're crossing into. I don't know what that is called or what it's going to be called, but I think we're moving from information age into something new. And and it's based off of what I'm seeing in the market, right? Where there's a lot more coaches, there are a lot more people talking about feelings and stuff like that. So I think there's another shift coming, and we're at the beginning years of this shift.
Interesting. That would be interesting to figure out what, because if it is more of an emotive or an emotional kind of shift, whereas information, it's a lot of data, right? We talk about big data.
I've kind of heard it as kind of like a conscience shift.
So digging deeper into the subconscious.
Yeah. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting. Very.
All right, Steve. Well, this was quite the recording.
Cheers. Hope you all liked it. Please give us your opinion about whether or not you like to feel, think, or both, or when and where. We'd love to hear some comments about this. And, you know, a little bit to consider, as Steve has said, get out there and start listening to what people say when they respond to you. If you ask them a question or something, do they say, I feel like, or I think, or I believe what it is? It'll be an interesting week for you if you do that.
Yeah.
Cheers.